Guys, we did it. We did it. We're free. Zaiwu, more like Zaipu. Apex, more like Gaypex. Mezzy is British. Flames. And Rops is cool. I like Rops. We have one question that needs to be answered today. Is the Vitality reign of dominance finally over? Did Kerrigan, Nico, Monacy save us from the evil, evil reign of Vitality? This might be hopium, and I don't know if it's necessarily true, but I kind of think they did in a way. But I also do think Vitality ended it themselves. A lot of times in this video, I'm gonna compare Prime Vitality to Prime Astralis. Because, I mean, Vitality's the greatest team we have seen play the game since Astralis did, you know, back in 2018, 2019, whenever that was. And now, when I say the Vitality era is over, I don't think they're gonna be a mediocre bad team, but I more just think this scene is gonna have a little bit more variance than it did before. Because, I mean, prior to Atlanta and Cologne, you look at a tournament and it's just fucking Vitality, 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 Vitality. For the past year and a half, it's been more rare to see Vitality not win a tournament than it has been, you know, Brokey hitting an op shot. So I think this is more of me just saying I don't think they're going to be a shoo-in to win every tournament they play. And, well, there are three main reasons for this. The first of which is quite simply just momentum. In my opinion, in Counter-Strike, with something as competitive as Tier 1 Counter-Strike, momentum is absolutely something you cannot take for granted. I think we've seen this a lot of times where certain teams seem to slow down, and while you might think they're still an incredibly good team, surely they're just kind of in a slump right now and they'll bounce back like nothing happened. Think FaZe after Antwerp. FaZe came into Antwerp winning 3 tournaments in a row, well, winning 2 tournaments and coming in first to third of a Blast Premier groups, but then they go on to win PGL Major Antwerp. And after that, they go on to lose in 2 quarters in a row, eventually win Cologne, which, you know, was the biggest tournament after Antwerp, but then go on to look a little bit shaky afterwards and, well, stink it up at the Rio Major. And while FaZe's reign of dominance wasn't nearly as insane as Vitality's has been for the past year and a half, FaZe had crazy momentum, winning 3 tournaments in a row. And after that kind of started to dry up, they didn't really bounce back from it for a while. Like, they still would win S-tier tournaments. They were still a very, very good team. But that specific iteration of FaZe never went on to make a really good deep run in a major again. Until, of course, CS2 started, and by then Twist was replaced by Frozen. Hey, cutie patootie. It's me, Garmour. Guys, if you would like to support me and what I do here, check out the long-term sponsor of the Garmour YouTube channel, SkinSwap. SkinSwap is the #1 place to trade your Rust or Counter-Strike skins for new ones where you can instantly upgrade your inventory. And if you use my code Garmour, you can get up to $50 on a free skin and a 3% lifetime selling bonus. And now you can also easily buy skins off the Chinese marketplace for cheaper prices than you ever could on the Western marketplaces. I truly think this is the best feature on any skin trading website, but if you are looking to sell, you can sell your skins for crypto, PayPal, Venmo, and a bunch of other withdrawal methods. Along with this, SkinSwap has a vault system now, which makes it the most rewarding skin trading website. And of course, don't forget the giveaways. And I think that's it. Thank you to them, thank you to you guys, and back to the video. I guess I would say another really good example of this is 2015 Fnatic, probably a better one than FaZe. You go on to look at their results this year, and besides one off tournament, you would not see Fnatic place outside of the top 4 at an event, winning almost every single one they attended, winning the Katowice Major, the Cologne Major. But then shockingly, after getting knocked out in the quarters of Cluj-Napoca, that Fnatic era team was kind of never the same. And it's not to say that they were a bad team after this. They still won tournaments. They still always placed fairly highly at tournaments. They just weren't as inevitable, as dominant as they were before, and there was more variance in the scene. Envy won that major, of course. And while Fnatic did go on to win 3 S-tier tournaments to close out the year, win an S-tier tournament to start 2016. At the first major of 2016, MLG Major Columbus, they lost in the quarters again to Astralis, and then only won 1 S-tier tournament for the rest of that year. And I think this might be kind of more similar to what happens with Vitality, because when that momentum starts to slip, and you think that teams can bounce back, it looks like they will bounce back, winning S-tier tournaments afterwards. It's not always a guarantee that that dominance will continue, especially especially at majors. And the thing with Vitality kind of losing their momentum and dropping out in quarters in back-to-back tournaments is they kind of did it to themselves, right? If you look at Vitality's results, very similar to Prime Fnatic's. I know I said I was going to use Prime Astralis. We'll get to them a little bit later. Fnatic works better for this. Vitality really weren't placing outside of the top 4 at any event and winning a majority of them, winning both majors in 2025. And well, this continued in 2026 until we get to Blast Rival Spring 2026. An event I was at, by the way, that shit was lit. I met hella creators. I met Fallen and Yakinder. But anyways, going into this tournament, there is something a little geepy-eepy going on with Vitality, right? They were so hot and they just had so much going on with all the tournaments that they were playing at, I guess. They decided after Rio, they weren't really gonna practice at all. I mean, they had just won 2 majors in 2025, just won another Intel Grand Slam in 2026. They had pretty much done it all at this fucking point, so they gave themselves a bit of a breather. And with this breather, with barely practicing heading into Blast Rivals, they still kind of easily win the event, beating Na'Vi 3-0 in that final. But at this point, cracks were beginning to show. While it was a dominant 3-0 victory, Vitality came into that final incredibly slow, right? They went down 11-1 on the T side of Nuke. They're getting fucking flattened. That then goes on to be one of the worst choked games ever, or one of the greatest comebacks ever, depending on if your cup is, you know, half full or half empty. Vitality then squeak Anubis by 13-11 and dominate on Dust 2 13-3. But for a team like Vitality, who had kind of owned every other team in the space for a year and a half at this point, this series was a little closer than what they were used to. And so then between that event and the next event, Atlanta, some of the players from the teams, ZywOo, Robs, and Flames, decided to stay in America and kind of continue their vacation. After not really practicing heading into Blast Rivals, it seems like they didn't practice at all going into Atlanta. You know, the boys went to Yosemite, took a couple of pictures. It looked fun, right? But then after at this point taking, I don't know how many weeks off, really, they went into Atlanta and looked really shaky, like compared to what they had been before. I think they did also say, like, at this point they didn't really value this tournament very highly, so like this tournament was going to be their practice instead of them actually practicing. I'm not in the fucking team, man. I'm just guessing here. Yeah, they come into this tournament and in their group upper bracket semifinal, they lose to BetBoom, who goes on to impress at Cologne, sure, but like at this point, #1 best team in the world era, maybe best team of all time, Vitality, playing a tier 2 BetBoom team with Flamus standing in for them. And honestly, map 3 wasn't even that close. BetBoom goes up 10-2 on Nuke. This is the second time in 2 tournaments where Vitality's Nuke T side just looks dysfunctional, but this time they actually lose because of it. And I mean, of course, with Vitality just being Vitality, they do still make the playoffs. But then in the playoffs, they have to play Na'Vi, a team they have dominated for a while now. Na'Vi is easily the second best team in the world, but there is still a big gap between them and Vitality. And after Vitality barely wins map 1, Dust 13-11, Na'Vi pulls Anubis out 13-11, finally getting a map against Vitality, something they haven't been able to do before this, and then absolutely stomp them on Inferno. And Vitality has their first quarterfinals exit since Blast Bounty Spring 2025. The first LAN of the year in 2025, right after they added ROPS. This was their worst result in 16 months. 16 months, this was their worst result. And at this point, what I'm thinking, what everyone is thinking is, it's still Vitality, right? They took off practice. They'll be back for Cologne, right? It's the biggest tournament of the year. It is the major. They will lock in for this. But this is kind of where, you know, that whole point of momentum comes into play. A lot of times when you let that kind of peter out like what Vitality did, it's a lot harder than you might expect to get that back. So then in the groups here, Vitality goes 3-1, losing to 9Z. They still look good, but you can tell from their group stage performance, they don't really look like prime Vitality at this point. But then you're also kind of like, okay, well, they did the same thing at Austin, losing to Legacy. They also did the same thing at Budapest, losing to FaZe in their first game. You know, these fuckers just go 3-1 in the third stage of majors. It is what it is. They always lock in for playoffs. But then in the playoffs, while it was an incredibly close series, literally every single map being 13-11, Falcons beat Vitality in the quarters here. And yes, Falcons did go on to win the entire event, but I don't know, man. I just feel like Prime Vitality wins this series every day of the week, right? And so you go back to that vacation they took, you know, right before this major. Kind of brutal timing in my opinion, but maybe they needed a break. Maybe they were feeling a little bit of burnout. And that leads me to my second point. This is where Prime Astralis ties in, and this is really the main driver of what killed the Astralis era. That and COVID, of course. See, when you are such a good team and when you are playing so many tournaments, you're going to be making deep runs at every single goddamn tournament you attend. And well, just the days of playing at tournaments, they start to add up. And you know, after a year and a half, 2 years, that starts to take a fucking toll on you, man. This is why Astralis had so many weird roster moves when COVID hit. You know, a 6th man, a 7th man, players coming in and out of the active lineup. It was a mess during this period. And one of the biggest drivers and why this happened, why Astralis said all of these moves were happening, was players on the main roster were just getting burnout. And so that's why I don't totally blame Vitality for taking a break when they did. If they felt like there was a gap between them and the next best teams in the world, and that they could take a little bit of time to rest. I mean, they won Rivals without any practice. Why would anything change? So like, I do get taking that break to try and stop yourselves from getting burnt out from just the long tournaments you have to play. But you're kind of cooked either way in this instance, right? Because you either keep grinding and risk the entire team getting burnt out, or you take that risk on destroying your team's momentum to try and get yourselves refreshed and ready to go for this major. And well, as we know, Vitality went with the option of trying to feel refreshed, you know, taking care of their mental health. I totally get that. But in my opinion, I think this is also what is going to kill their era. And I do have to keep reiterating, this is not me saying Vitality is going to become a tier 2 team. I do not doubt that they're still going to win tournaments, look like the best team in the world at a lot of points. But I don't think they're going to be as dominant, and I don't think they're going to win back-to-back majors again. That's just me. I feel like I shouldn't be crazy to say a team isn't going to win back-to-back majors, but with how good Vitality has been looking, maybe it is kind of a crazy thing to say. I don't know. But so anyways, like if we are making comparisons to, you know, Fnatic and how their momentum kind of stopped, Astralis with their burnout problems, you know, these are two problems that have kind of destroyed team eras in the past. But the third reason I have for Vitality's era being over is I just think a lot of other teams in this space are starting to close that gap between Vitality and themselves. I think there's been a lot of improvement in the tier 1 space. So as of right now, if we are to look at the current VRS rankings, Vitality is the number 3 ranked team in the world. And the number 1 team, Spirit, I think could beat Vitality on any given day. We already saw that Falcons can beat them. We've already seen that Na'Vi can beat them. And I think these 3 teams plus Vitality, so I guess these 4 teams, are kind of in their own group now. Before it was Vitality's up here, every other team is right here. And now I think Spirit, Falcons, Vitality, Na'Vi are all in the same group up here. You know, even with Na'Vi kind of disappointing at Cologne, I'm not ready to just write them off. And so then I think the tier right below, where I think more often than not Vitality would win this matchup, but I wouldn't be super surprised if they upset them, would then be Furia, G2, but you know, with the new roster moves, I don't really know. Genuinely, I would put BetBoom in there. 9Z, we've already seen them beat Vitality. Maybe Aurora with the roster moves, but Aurora's a weird one. I choose to ignore them right now. And I think that's pretty much it. So you have 3 teams that I think can compete with Vitality on their level now. And then Furia, G2. BetBoom is kind of a sleeper pick, but you never know. Maybe even Foot I should add in there. And 9Z is a tier right below that I feel like could upset them. I just think right now at this point, the scene is going to be a lot more competitive. And well, in my opinion, I think that's better for everyone. Better for everyone's viewing experience. But yeah, it's kind of using the past eras we've had, and I guess just like current day what's going on to try and predict what's going to happen throughout the rest of 2026. Can this prediction absolutely without a doubt be false and Vitality makes me eat my own shit? I mean, yeah, they're prime Vitality. Man, I can't... Even with them not winning Cologne, I still feel like I have Stockholm Syndrome from what they've done to me the past year and a half. So I still, in the back of my mind, like, don't doubt that they can come back in, you know, full force and just start destroying everyone else in the scene. But I think overall, like, my take is the Vitality era is now officially over and that we are all freed. Maybe this is a little bit too much hopium, okay? But I do think, you know, like with the momentum being gone, while they tried to avoid burnout by taking that break, them losing this major and looking like maybe you know, the field is more even now, is going to kick them back into high gear and make them work harder than they were before. And that honestly might just make the burnout come even sooner as well. There's a lot of factors of what might be going on now at this point. A lot of different things that can happen. But hey, man, all we can do now is wait and see. But yeah, that's it for me, fellas. Let me know if you agree or disagree with this take. You know, leave a like, comment, subscribe-a-ling, turn on notifications. And I think that's it for me, Squadron. I'll see you fellas next time.